You'd think that living in a quiet suburban neighborhood near the lake, the kind with freshly cut lawns, backyard BBQs, and neighbors who wave on sight, would bring with it a certain sense of peace. I thought so, too. That's why, after spending 2 decades working my way up to the ranks to become the chief of police in our small but growing town, I decided to settle down in this particular neighborhood. I wanted somewhere calm. Somewhere I wouldn't have to think about work the moment I pulled into the driveway. Somewhere my wife and I could finally exhale and enjoy the rewards of a life spent keeping others safe. And for a while it was exactly that. Peaceful, quiet, predictable, until Karen moved in. Now, to give you a clear picture, Karen wasn't your average problem neighbor. This wasn't a woman who let her weeds get too tall or played loud music late into the night. No, Karen's crimes were far more insidious. She believed she ran this neighborhood. Never mind that the HOA had an actual elected board. Never mind that she hadn't even lived here 6 months. In her mind, Karen was the self-appointed sheriff of the cul-de-sac, and by sheriff, I mean dictator. Her methods were classic Karen. Passive-aggressive notes on windshields. Complaints filed over unsightly flower beds or porch furniture that didn't meet her impossible standards. Threats to report neighbors to the HOA over imaginary infractions like having unapproved lawn ornaments. But her favorite target by far was me, not because I ever gave her a reason. Quite the opposite. I kept to myself, mowed my lawn, waved politely when forced into conversation. But Karen, for reasons known only to herself, took particular issue with my car. A meticulously restored 1969 Mustang Fastback in deep navy blue with chrome trim so polished you could check your teeth in it. It wasn't just a car, it was a family heirloom. My late father's pride and joy. Something I'd spent years restoring in his honor. To Karen, though, it was nothing more than an eyesore, a disgrace to the neighborhood. An old hunk of junk she insisted violated HOA guidelines, despite the fact that my paperwork proved otherwise. It didn't matter that I kept it in pristine condition, parked neatly in my driveway, never obstructing anyone. In Karen's mind, the Mustang had to go. Her fixation only worsened when her son, a 20-something entitled brat named Travis who seemed allergic to employment and responsibility in equal measure, took a shine to it. More than once, I caught him lingering a little too close to the car, eyeing with a mix of greed and juvenile arrogance. He even had the gall to ask, point blank, how much I wanted for it. I told him the truth. It's not for sale, not now, not ever. That should have been the end of it. But with people like Karen, nothing is ever that simple. Things started small. I'd find Karen hovering suspiciously near my driveway, phone in hand, snapping pictures of my car from every conceivable angle. She complained at HOA meetings about old vehicles lowering property values, while shooting daggers at me from across the room. I ignored her. I dealt with far worse in my line of work than an entitled suburban busybody with too much time on her hands. Then Travis escalated things. He showed up at my house uninvited one Saturday morning, knocking like he had a right to be there. When I answered, coffee in hand, he smirked like he was doing me a favor. You know, it's kind of sad, an old guy like you hanging on to something like that. You should let someone younger take it off your hands. I didn't rise to the bait. It's not for sale, Travis. Have a good day. He didn't move. Come on, man. My mom says you're not even supposed to have it here. She said she's talking to the HOA about getting it towed. I almost laughed. Good luck with that. I shut the door in his face. That should have been the final warning. But entitled people, true believers in their own importance, don't take rejection well. Especially not when they've been raised by someone like Karen, who seemed to think HOA regulations were a personal extension of her will. A week later, things got weird. I came home to find a handwritten notice of violation taped to my garage door. It looked official at first glance, until I realized the HOA's name was spelled wrong and the violation number was just a random string of digits Karen clearly made up. At the bottom, in bold red ink, it read, "Remove vehicle immediately or face fines." Signed, of course, Neighborhood Compliance Committee, a committee that didn't exist. I took it down, tossed in the trash, and documented everything. Not because I was worried. As chief of police, I knew exactly how powerless Karen's little threats were, but because experience had taught me something crucial about people like her, they escalate. Sure enough, escalate she did. It was a Sunday afternoon when things truly boiled over. I was in the garage, polishing the Mustang, when my wife came rushing in with that look, the one that said, "You're not going to believe this." Outside, Karen was standing at the edge of our driveway, arms folded, lips pursed, with Travis at her side, looking smug as ever. And behind them, 2 police cruisers, lights flashing. I stepped outside calmly, arms crossed, watching as one of my own patrol officers approached looking more confused and concerned. "Chief, sorry to bother you. We got a call about a stolen vehicle." Karen, emboldened by the presence of law enforcement, puffed herself up like a peacock. "That's right. That car is stolen. I told you. I've been reporting it for months. That man has no right to have it here." The officer looked at me. I raised an eyebrow. "Karen, this is my vehicle. It's been registered in my name for over a decade." Travis jumped in. "He's lying. That car belonged to my uncle. My mom says he stole it and won't give it back." The officer's confusion deepened. "Chief, do you have the registration?" Without a word, I walked into the garage, grabbed a neatly organized folder I kept on the Mustang, title, registration, insurance, service history, all in my name, and handed it over. The officer flipped through it, then gave me a look that was equal part apology and disbelief. He turned back to Karen. "Ma'am, this vehicle isn't stolen. It's legally owned by Chief, my last name." Karen's face contorted into something between confusion and outrage. Well, then why did my HOA notice say it was in violation? He's not supposed to have it here. "That's a civil matter, ma'am," the officer said, clearly trying to keep his patience. "Not a criminal one. And it's not even a violation, according to the HOA president we just called." My wife, standing beside me now with her arms crossed, couldn't help herself. "Karen, did you really think you could call the cops on the chief of police and have him tow his car without paperwork?" Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again, and then, the cherry on top, my officer, flipping through his tablet, said casually, "Ma'am, it looks like there's an outstanding warrant in your name. Failure to appear on a previous HOA-related civil suit." Karen went pale. "Oh, I'm going to need you to come with me." The look on her face? Priceless. And that was only the beginning. To say the neighborhood was buzzing after that afternoon would be an understatement. Word spread faster than wildfire through the cul-de-sac. Karen, the self-appointed queen of HOA rule enforcement, hauled off in back of a police cruiser, her son standing slack-jawed in the driveway like someone had unplugged his brain. It wasn't even noon before half the neighbors had texted me asking if the rumors were true. Yes, I confirmed with polite restraint. Karen had been taken in on an outstanding warrant. Yes, it was HOA-related. No, it had nothing to do with my car. Or at least it hadn't, not directly. The fallout, however, was just beginning. When you're a police chief in a small town, you learn to pick your battles. You learn that some people, no matter how loud or entitled they act, are best handled with calm professionalism and a long paper trail. That's why I hadn't made a scene. That's why I documented everything Karen had done, from the fake violation notices to her baseless harassment over my Mustang. I wasn't waiting for revenge. I was waiting for Karen to implode on her own. Still, seeing her cuffed and placed gently, but firmly, into the back seat of that cruiser had been satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. Not because I'm petty, but because justice, no matter how long it takes, feels good when it finally lands where it belongs. But Travis didn't take the hint. The next day, as if nothing had happened, he strutted up to my driveway like a man on a mission. Same cocky smirk, same entitled swagger. Only this time, he brought company. A friend, another young guy, mid-20s, backwards cap, vape pen, the type who speaks in threats but folds the moment things get serious. "Look, man," Travis said, like we were on the verge of brokering some grand deal, "I know things got a little weird yesterday, but honestly, we could just make this easy." I leaned against the Mustang's hood, arms crossed, Waiting. You don't want all this drama. My mom's got connections. HOA stuff, city council, whatever. We could take this car off your hands, cash in hand. No paperwork. No questions. You save yourself a lot of headaches. Think about it. Cops don't need to know. HOA doesn't need to know. I stared at him, letting the silence stretch long enough for his friend to shift uncomfortably beside him. You're trying to buy my car under the table? After you just called the police on me? Travis had the nerve to shrug. What's done is done. Let's move past it. Just name your price, old man. Old man. That one always made me smile. Here's my price. I said evenly. You turn around. You walk off my property. You never step foot near this car again. Travis laughed like I'd told a joke. That's not how this works. My mom's gonna make your life hell. Man, you'll cave eventually. You'll wish you just sold it. I stepped closer, calm but firm, the way you learn to do in law enforcement when someone's trying to play tough. You don't seem to understand something, Travis. I am the police chief. Your mom's connections don't scare me. Your threats don't scare me. What does concern me is how many laws you're willing to break over a car you don't own and will never touch. Harassment, trespassing, attempted fraud. Want me to keep going? For the first time, his bravado cracked. Just a flicker. His friend, realizing they'd severely underestimated the situation, nudged him. Let's bounce, man. This dude's serious. But Travis, either too proud or too stupid to back down, muttered something under his breath as they retreated. Something about how this wasn't over. He was right. It wasn't. Karen got out on bail within 48 hours. Her mugshot already circulating the neighborhood's unofficial Facebook group. The comments were brutal. HOA Karen finally gets a taste of her own medicine. Guess those fake citations caught up with her. Wonder if she's writing fake violations from a jail cell now. Karen, for her part, doubled down. She marched right back to the HOA board the moment she was free, demanding they fine me for harboring illegal vehicles, and accusing me of orchestrating her arrest as some sort of personal vendetta. The board, to their credit, politely laughed her out of the room. But Karen wasn't done embarrassing herself. She started filing noise complaints about my garage door opening too early in the morning. She claimed my wife's flower beds violated HOA color schemes. She even tried to accuse me of operating an illegal mechanic business out of my garage simply because I was detailing the Mustang one Saturday. Every complaint was documented, everyone dismissed, and through it all, Travis kept circling like a buzzard. I'd catch him driving past slowly, window down, glaring. I started parking the Mustang inside, not because I was worried, but because I knew how entitled people think. If they can't see it, they can't covet it. Then came the final straw. Late one night, well past midnight, my security cameras caught Travis creeping onto my driveway. Hood up, flashlight in hand, reaching for the Mustang's driver's side door like he had a right, like ownership could be claimed by proximity alone. What Travis didn't realize is that my cameras weren't just for show. They were tied directly to my phone, and that I was watching live from my recliner with a cup of coffee in hand. I dialed dispatch, not because I needed backup, but because sometimes it's important to make things official. Hey, it's Chief last name. Got a trespasser at my address. Want to send a unit? Oh, and let the rookie handle it. Good training opportunity. By the time the patrol car rolled up, Travis was still fumbling with the door handle. Lights hit him. Siren chirped. He froze like a deer in headlights. The officer, a young, eager recruit I've been mentoring, stepped out with the kind of confidence only authority can give. Hands where I can see them. Step away from the vehicle. I watched from the porch as Travis, red-faced and shaking, tried to spin a story. I live here. My mom's house. She said I could borrow the car. The rookie looked toward me. Chief, want to confirm ownership? I gave a thumbs up. Mine. Always has been. Travis's face crumbled. Come on, man. You can't arrest me for this. Oh, but I can, the rookie said, already cuffing him. And I will. Trespassing. Attempted theft. Want me to keep going. I almost laughed at how neatly those words mirror my own from days before. Karen appeared moments later, bathrobe-clad, hair wild, demanding to know what was happening. When she realized her son was being led to the cruiser in cuffs, her shriek could probably be heard 3 counties over. "You can't do this. This is harassment." "No, ma'am," the rookie said, perfectly polite. "This is the law." And standing there, watching her son hauled off like she had been, Karen's face finally cracked. Not with anger, not with entitlement, but with a dawning realization that she'd picked the wrong neighbor, the wrong fight, the wrong car, the wrong man, and it was far too late to undo any of it. If there's one thing I've learned from decades in law enforcement, it's this. Entitled people don't learn lessons the easy way. They don't learn from embarrassment, from warnings, from quiet shame behind closed doors. No, they double down, they escalate, and they almost always think they can outsmart the system, right up until the system bites back. And Karen? Karen thought she could bite back at me. The morning after Travis was arrested for trespassing and attempted theft, I figured things would finally settle. Surely even Karen couldn't twist this into something in her favor. Not after her son was caught red-handed on camera trying to break into a car. Surely this would be the end of it. But no. For people like Karen, humiliation isn't a deterrent. It's fuel. By noon, I had HOA emails forwarded to me from a neighborhood president. Karen had gone nuclear. She was demanding an emergency HOA meeting to address the harassment and illegal conduct by me, a rogue neighbor abusing his position as police chief for personal revenge. According to her, I had entrapped her innocent son and used excessive force against him by having him arrested in accordance with the law. Of course, the HOA board, already fed up with her antics, wasn't buying it. They denied her request outright, citing ongoing legal matters and clear evidence of criminal behavior unrelated to HOA governance. Still, Karen wouldn't let it go. She started plastering flyers on neighborhood mailboxes, warning others about the danger I posed. She spun wild tales about corruption, vendettas, even suggesting I had tampered with evidence to frame her and her son. The flyers didn't last long. The HOA ordered them removed immediately, but it was enough to stir whispers among the few gullible enough to believe her. Now, most of my neighbors knew better. They'd seen the footage. They knew Karen's reputation. Still, a whisper is like a weed. If you don't pull it, it spreads. So I pulled it, not with threats, not with force, but with paperwork. You see, Karen's little stunts weren't just HOA violations anymore. They were starting to border on harassment, defamation, and conspiracy. I documented every flyer, every false complaint, every slanderous word she spread. And then I handed it all over, not to the police department, but to my attorney. A restraining order was filed within days, not just against Travis, but Karen as well. No contact, no trespassing, no more complaints filed against me, my wife, or my property. Violated. And it wouldn't just be an HOA squabble, it would be criminal. Karen, of course, took this exactly as well as you'd expect. She showed up at the next HOA meeting. This time a lawyer of her own in tow, some tired-looking man who clearly realized too late the client he'd taken on, and tried to turn the entire neighborhood against me. She accused me of harassment, abuse of power, intimidation. She pointed at me across the conference room like a courtroom drama villain, demanding I be removed from my position, from the HOA, from the neighborhood itself. What she didn't know, I had already anticipated this move. Waiting patiently in my folder was a neatly organized collection of evidence. Security footage, timestamps, copies of every fabricated notice she left on my door, every email, every voicemail, every witness statement from neighbors she'd harassed, even screenshots of the neighborhood Facebook group where she'd slandered me. I let her finish her tirade. I let her dig her hole. And then, when the HOA board turned to me from my side, I calmly laid out every piece of evidence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't posture. I let the facts speak louder than her hysteria. The HOA president, a man not known for dramatic speeches, summed it up perfectly. Karen, you're lucky the chief's been this patient. Frankly, if it were up to me, you'd be facing far more than a restraining order right now. Her lawyer sank lower in his seat. But Karen doubled down one last time. I'll sue, she screeched. slamming her palm on the table. I'll take this to the press. You're all corrupt. You're all in on it. I know my rights. What she didn't know, my attorney had already filed a cease and desist for defamation. If she so much as tried to smear my name publicly again, it would trigger a full-blown civil suit she couldn't hope to win. The HOA board, exhausted and embarrassed for her, voted unanimously to suspend her HOA privileges indefinitely. No more meetings. No more votes. No more authority. She was, in essence, stripped of her self-appointed crown. Her son, meanwhile, wasn't faring much better. The charges stuck. Community service, fines, probation. Nothing severe enough to ruin his life, just enough to remind him actions have consequences, especially when caught on camera. And me? I could have stopped there. I could have enjoyed my quiet victory, parked my Mustang back in the driveway, and moved on. But Karen had made this personal, and I believe in finishing what others start. So I made a few calls. Nothing underhanded, just a careful, lawful push in the right direction. Code enforcement came by for a thorough inspection of Karen's property. Turns out a meticulously maintained facade hid a host of violations: improperly stored waste, unpermitted renovations, landscaping encroachments onto public land. Fines piled up, notices stacked, repair orders arrived. And when she tried to complain, the restraining order ensured she couldn't direct so much as a letter in my direction. Her reign of HOA terror ended not with a bang, but with a mountain of fines, legal fees, and a neighborhood that no longer feared her. But perhaps the sweetest moment of all came quietly, months later. I was out front washing the Mustang, music playing, sun shining, peace finally restored. Karen shuffled by on her way to retrieve her mail. No eye contact, no snide remarks, no clipboard in hand. Just a defeated woman, stripped of her self-importance, reduced to what she always should have been, a neighbor, nothing more. And as she passed, the faintest glance at the car she tried so hard to claim, I saw it. That flicker of realization, that grudging, bitter acceptance. Some battles you were never meant to win, especially when you pick a fight with the wrong man. Some people think revenge means slamming a door, yelling in someone's face, or taking something away just to prove a point. But the truth is, real revenge, the kind that lasts, comes slowly. It's not about causing pain. It's about causing perspective. Making someone live with the realization that they lost everything because they couldn't control their own arrogance. Karen was living that reality now. After months of escalating nonsense, after police reports, arrests, HOA meetings, and legal filings, she finally found herself exactly where she had never imagined she'd be: completely powerless. And it wasn't just because of me. It was because of her own inability to recognize when she'd already lost. Her reign over the HOA? Finished. Her influence with the neighbors? Destroyed. Her son's reputation? Ruined by his own actions. But Karen couldn't accept defeat quietly. Oh no, she had one last move. With the restraining order firmly in place, she couldn't legally confront me anymore. Couldn't leave flyers. Couldn't make complaints. Couldn't even speak my name without risking jail time. So she turned inward, retreating to her home, where she began crafting a new narrative, not one for the HOA, but for herself. A story in which she was a victim, unjustly persecuted by corrupt neighbors and a vindictive police chief. I heard whispers through the grapevine. She told friends she was being targeted by the system. She spun tales of abuse, of threats, of conspiracies no one outside her own head could believe. But those stories couldn't save her from the very real consequences stacking up around her. Code enforcement, emboldened by her long history of noncompliance, began to tighten the screws. Property inspections became more frequent. Fines doubled when ignored. That perfect lawn she was so proud of, now overgrown and peppered with city-issued violation signs. Those unpermitted renovations she thought no one knew about, red-tagged and marked for removal at her expense. And then came the final nail in the coffin. The lien. See, when you rack up enough fines and refuse to pay, the city doesn't just let it slide. They place a lien on your property. Which means when Karen finally tried to sell her house, whether to flee the shame or chase a fresh start somewhere new, she couldn't. Not until every penny owed was paid. I didn't need to lift a finger. I didn't need to speak a word. I simply watched from my porch, polishing my Mustang, as karma handled the rest. One day, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's yard. A desperate move, no doubt, but inevitable. The neighborhood watched with quiet satisfaction as weeks turned to months with no offers. Potential buyers, upon hearing the stories from nearby residents or noticing the mountain of violations attached to the property, backed out before deals could close. Meanwhile, Travis, he disappeared. Word was, after his probation ended, he packed up and moved out of state. Some said he found work. Others said he found trouble. Either way, his chapter in this neighborhood was closed. And good riddance. Karen's spiral continued. Her once pristine yard became a patchwork of dead grass and sun-bleached weeds. Her porch, once adorned with seasonal wreaths and meticulously arranged potted plants, now sat bare and crumbling. Even the mailbox sagged, rusted at the hinges, a silent testament to the decay of her once inflated ego. Neighbors who once feared her cross the street now with pity instead of apprehension. Children who'd been scolded for riding bikes too fast past her driveway now zipped by without a second glance. The power she'd wielded through intimidation and bluster was gone, and in its place stood a woman hollowed out by her own choices. And me? I lived well. My wife and I enjoyed quiet evenings on our porch, the Mustang gleaming proudly in the driveway, untouched, unbothered, unchallenged. Neighbors waved. Some stopped to chat, to share a laugh about how things had turned out. The HOA meetings, once battlegrounds of petty complaints, became brief affairs focused on actual community improvement rather than one woman's vendettas. But perhaps the sweetest moment of all came quietly, without ceremony or confrontation. It was a sunny Saturday, the kind perfect for washing classic car, when I noticed movement next door. Karen, disheveled and tired-looking, was struggling to load a battered suitcase into the back of a dented sedan. No moving truck, no goodbye party. Just her, alone, hauling the remnant of her pride piece by piece into a car that had seen better days. She didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge the neighbors who watched from behind curtains and hedges. She simply drove away, leaving behind a house no longer hers, a reputation no longer feared, and a neighborhood that will remember her not for her authority, but for her downfall. A new family moved in weeks later. Young couple, kids, friendly smiles. They asked no questions about the previous owner. They brought fresh energy, new flowers, laughter. The house, once a symbol of control and conflict, became part of the neighborhood again. Life moved on. But Karen? She'll carry the weight of her actions forever. Every time she fills out a job application and explains her arrest. Every time she applies for housing and answers for her debt. Every time she tells her version of the story and watches people's faces shift from sympathy to skepticism. That's the thing about people like her. They believe they can bend the world to their will. They forget the world bends back. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it lets you watch. It's funny how things come full circle. When Karen first moved into our neighborhood, she strutted through it like a queen surveying her subjects, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched like a crown, barking orders about lawn heights and mailboxes and fence colors, as if she'd written the HOA charter herself. But by the time she drove off for the last time, her empire was nothing more than an empty house and a reputation in ruins. For months afterward, people still whisper about her. Not out of fear anymore, but disbelief. Remember when Karen tried to get the chief's Mustang towed? Remember when her son got arrested on his driveway? Remember how she thought she could control everyone, and now she can't even sell her house? Stories have a way of growing in neighborhoods like ours. They become cautionary tales. And Karen's story? It became legend. The new family who bought her house knew bits and pieces. Impossible not to, with how fast gossip travels. But they didn't care. They were the type who hosted cookouts, who waved first, who let their kids ride bikes and laugh too loud, without worrying about passive-aggressive notes on the mailbox. In a way, their arrival felt like a reset, like the neighborhood itself was shaking off Karen's shadow and stepping into something brighter. But Karen's downfall wasn't just satisfying in the petty neighborhood drama sense. It served as a reminder, too, one I carried quietly as I went about my days. People often forget who they're dealing with. Karen thought she was untouchable because she'd mastered the petty bureaucracies of suburban life. HOA rules, nuisance complaints, fake violations, those were her weapons. But real authority, the kind backed by law and reason and patience, doesn't swing wildly. It waits. It watches. It lets people like Karen build their own gallows one petty act at a time. I never needed to retaliate. I never needed to raise my voice or stoop to her level. I just needed to let her be herself long enough for the consequences to catch up. And that's exactly what happened. The irony, of course, wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a woman who weaponized HOA rules, who called the cops over garden gnomes and holiday lights, calling those same cops in desperation when her son was caught trying to steal my Mustang. And those cops? They were my people. Officers I'd hired, trained, mentored. Officers who looked at me and saw not just a badge, but their chief, someone who led by example, not ego. Her final humiliation wasn't the arrest. It wasn't the fines. It wasn't even the lien on her house. It was a realization that for all her bluster about connections and influence, she'd been outplayed from the start by the very rules she thought she controlled. Neighbors often asked me afterward, usually with a grin, why I didn't push harder, why I didn't press more charges, sue for harassment, drive the nail in deeper when I had every legal right. The answer was simple. I didn't need to. Karen's life unraveled because of Karen. All I did was let her pull the thread. Besides, revenge, real, satisfying revenge, isn't about destruction. It's about restoration. Restoring peace. Restoring community. Restoring that feeling of safety and normalcy people like Karen worked so hard to disturb. And in that, I'd already won. With Karen gone and her house reborn under better hands, the neighborhood healed. HOA meetings became shorter, friendlier. Disputes were settled with conversation, not threats. Block parties returned. Kids played freely again. My wife's garden flourished without anonymous complaints about flower color schemes. And my Mustang? It sat gleaming in the driveway, untouched, unbothered. A silent monument to patience, resilience, and the sweet satisfaction of seeing justice play out the right way. But perhaps the greatest irony of all came one afternoon, almost a year after Karen's departure. I was gassing up the Mustang when a younger officer, one of my newer hires, struck up a conversation. "Chief," he said, eyeing the car with admiration, "mind if I ask something?" "Sure. Is it true? The story about your neighbor, the HOA lady? The one who tried to get you in trouble over this car?" I smiled. "Most of it." He laughed. "Guess she didn't know who she was dealing with, huh?" "No," I said, wiping a smudge on the chrome. "But she knows now." He shook his head, grinning. "People like that, they always think they're the smartest in the room." "They do." I agreed, until they learned the hard way there's a difference between having authority and having power. He nodded, thoughtful, and between loud neighbors and real law. Exactly. As I drove off, engine rumbling like a promise, I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of closure, not just for Karen's chapter, but for every moment I questioned whether moving here had been the right choice. In the end, the neighborhood I'd wanted, peaceful, respectful, neighborly, had returned, because no matter how loud a Karen gets, silence wins in the end.